But the Supreme Court, which so far, I think 26 of 28 times they have ruled at least partially in favor of Trump. But I think perhaps one of the most important cases is coming up next month, and that is the issue of tariffs. Okay. And there is no ambiguity. I think 98% of the people would say that the power to tax and the power to impose tariffs rest with Congress. That's in Article 1 of the Constitution. And Congress has obviously laid down and abdicated its duty, but this is a chance for the Supreme Court to really set the record straight. And I think it's going to be a trifecta. And what I mean by that is that no other president has ever used the same emergency justification that Trump has used. But on top of that, if they rule that it's illegal for him to oppose tariffs, the economy wins because the stock market will soar. There'll be a lot more predictability for business. People, our allies, will think it's much easier to do business and trade with us. Donald Trump will win because he does best when he has an adversary, right? One of the things that really doomed his 2020 campaign were those COVID press conferences, that where he was all up there alone, meandering. He does best when he has a boogeyman. So if the Supreme Court overrules him, he can have it both ways. If the economy does well, he'll take credit. If it doesn't do as well, you say, well, if they hadn't overruled tariffs, we'd be fine. And third, and perhaps most importantly for the court, they win because the Supreme Court's public approval rating standing has never, ever been lower. And people feel that they're just enabling Trump. And here's a chance for them to stand up and say, hey, this is what the Constitution says, and everybody wins. So what do you think? Am I right or wrong? What say you, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen time and again, Trump will always find an excuse to blame someone else. He's allergic to accountability. So when something goes wrong, it's someone else's fault. When something goes right, it's all only because of him. I think this could be very interesting to see. To this point, the court has pretty much let the president do whatever he wants unchecked. They've expanded executive power. It's become incredibly expansive, and it's unusual when they rule against him on the tariff thing. This is interesting because again, the Congress's authority on tariffs is absolute. We just saw the Senate vote down actually the tariffs in Brazil, which is the first time I've seen the Senate that directly the act that unilaterally in defiance of the president, but that's a rarity. So again, I think we'll see what the court does. Like if if past has been precedent, the court will likely find a way to give something to Trump, because I can agree, none of those justices want Trump's ire and the mess that comes with it. When he starts calling you out and threatening you, and they want to try to avoid that at all costs. So even if they strike some of it down, they will try to find a way to give the president a win just to avoid the headache.
And before you respond, Ashley, I'll just say, if there's any doubt that these are not being used for economic purposes, 50% tariffs on Brazil because you don't like the way they're treating their former president, additional tariffs on Canada because you don't like the tone of an ad. I mean, are you kidding me? And by the way, the whole point of being a Supreme Court justice is you have tenure for life. So you should not be subject to the ire of any president. You should not be subject to primary threats and all this stuff that have cowed so many of these Republicans into submission. So I think it's really inexcusable. But unfortunately, Kurt, I think you make a good point about they'll try to have their cake and eat it too somehow. What do you think?
Yeah, I just have been trying to do as much talking as I can to people about which way they like Supreme Court experts on which way they think this will go. And it's super interesting because if it really goes along party lines, I still haven't found anybody that can say I get the argument like this is a tax and so it's the Congress lays. I mean, if you talk to Rand Paul, that's what he would say. But it's amazing how it can be spun one way or the other. So I really don't know how they will rule. See, I feel a little different that there's some Supreme Court members that are willing to just really truly follow the law or how they interpret it. And I think that this could be a lot closer. There could be a swing vote that's a Republican, kind of like a Roberts. Like, I don't think Roberts will give away anything just for Trump if he believes it's going to hurt the Supreme Court long
Well,
term.
yeah, and he's the one who's always talking so much about his care for the court's, his concern for the court's
And the
reputation,
integrity. Yeah, yeah,
his
yeah.
legacy. So here's a chance to really, just frankly, disprove a lot of naysayers.
And Amy Coney Barrett has shown that she's willing to do her own thing. Actually, Brett has done his own thing, Kavanaugh. So I actually think that you've got two or three that could go one way or the other, depending. Again, I'm not an expert on the legal case, but I think that it will just be interesting to watch. And the oral arguments are Wednesday. So does that mean they're going to, what did they say? I mean, they obviously don't have to roll on it until June.
Yeah, I think they were trying to rule on it by the end of the year, but it will be interesting, as you say, because I think that obviously Thomas and Alito always go with the president, and you can assume that the three liberal justices will go against him. So that leaves the four other ones, and I agree. Neil Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, um, and Amy Coney Barrett, Roberts have all shown unpredictability. Which, by the way, when the Supreme Court has been best, it's when it's been unpredictable. When you don't know, and this is Anthony Kennedy, whatever you say about him, was a classic example about that. You couldn't tell how he was going to rule on a lot of things. He was a big proponent of same-sex marriage. Who knew, right?
Yep. Here's what I think is going to be interesting if they don't rule by December. Do you get to the point that you rule next June 30th and all the tariff drama's over? Like, say it is. I mean, who knows if it will be, but let's assume it is. And then what happens? Do you go back and overturn all those? I mean, it would just be very interesting.
I think they're going to
Like,
try to rule because, in part, I think the president has basically asked for this to be fast tracked just because policy is in limbo, and
yeah.
some of the court orders that have put a temporary stay on the whether it's tariffs or even some of the other things like the National Guard deployments, like they can only put that on pause for so long before the president's just going to say, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway." Like, what are you going to do
Yeah,
about it?
right. Totally.
Yeah, and I think that obviously all the lower courts have ruled against the president, and even Scott Bessent has acknowledged that if they lose this, they're going to have to start issuing all these refunds. I mean, what a
That's my point. The longer it goes, it's going to be really hard to.
Let's
Let's go
unpack.
give China like $100 billion.
Logistically going to be a little tough to unwind some
Yeah,
of these things.
that would be tough. And